Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this image. Now this is a fairly close-up study of this apple, but it didn't start off that way. Initially I was trying to create a normal picture of an apple with a graduated background, but I realized that if I closed in on the subject I ended up with a much better composition. Okay, so let me take you through what I've got set up so far. Here I have a background roll which I've arranged in this curve to the back of it, which will give me the graduation in the finished image. On the table here I've just set up a piece of plywood just to support the subject, which is this apple. Then coming further forward I have my camera. And on the camera I have a 24-70 zoom lens. Initially this is at about 35mm, so the whole thing is actually quite compact. So on the top of the camera here I have this flash trigger, which is also capable of controlling the energy in the flash. The camera is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to see all the results. It's probably worth mentioning the tripod and head that I'm using. This particular tripod has this geared center column, which allows me to move the camera up and down quite smoothly and to get exactly the right height. This I find very important for doing this type of work. And also, by using this geared head, I have very fine control over the position of the camera. Okay, so the first thing to do, as I usually do, is just to take a normal exposure without any flash, just to see if there's any contamination from the house lights. So I'll just compose the image. So just look through the viewfinder. There we go. Something like that. Okay, so we can see from this image that we're getting just with the house lights that there is quite a lot of contamination. So looking at the settings that I've got on the camera, this is the flash sync speed, which is 250th of a second. I'm at ISO 100, but I'm actually on an aperture of 2.8. Now the chances are I will not be using 2.8 for this image. It's more likely to be f8. So I'll just change that from 2.8 to f8. And we'll give that another go. There we are. And at f8 the image has virtually disappeared. There are a couple of highlights left, but nothing too serious. Okay, so with that exercise complete, it's time to get a light set. Here we go, I'll just pop this in about here somewhere. What I'm trying to go for here is to get the flash head directly above the subject. Now I'm using this Profoto flash head at the moment, but you could do this with a normal speed light. There's not a lot of energy required. Okay, so with that roughly in position, what I will do is just take a test image just to see how the exposure is. Okay, so that's our initial exposure. It's down a bit, probably by about a stop, I would think. So I'll just add 1 stop of energy to that flash, and we'll give that another go. There we are, that's not bad. That's definitely getting there. Now you should be able to see in this image that the shadow that I'm getting from this is actually quite sharp. And obviously with the light coming directly from above, it's casting a shadow directly underneath the apple. Now the whole idea of what I'm trying to show you here is just what happens to the light and the quality of the light as the flash moves relative to the subject. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is just move the flash a little bit further down. So as I'm moving it down, the shadows underneath the apple should get softer. So let me just take that down a little. Now I've reduced the height between the apple and the flash. Therefore, I'm also going to need to reduce the energy to keep the exposure the same. So I think about a stop should do it. So I'll just take a stop off that exposure and we'll take another test. So that's virtually the same exposure. This is what we had before. This is what we've got now. But by moving the flash, you should be able to see that this shadow is starting to get a little softer. Again, this is where it was. This is what it is now. So from that then, if I reduce the height even more, the shadow will get softer still. But there'll be another effect as well, and I'll show you that as we carry on. So let me just take this down. So each time, very roughly, I'm halving the distance between the flash and the subject. Therefore, due to the inverse square law, this time I will need to take off 2 stops to keep the exposure about the same. So we'll just do that, and we'll fire that again. There, that's the sort of result I was looking for. As you can see, if I go back to the previous image, you can see that the shadow here is starting to soften. On this image, the shadow is quite considerably softer, but also the background has now become quite nicely graduated. Now the effect of the background getting a graduation is due to the position of this head. So this head is now approximately halfway along the height of the back, and therefore you're getting a graduation due to the light not being able to turn backwards out of the head. And this is exactly the same whether this is a flash head or a speed light. You will get exactly the same result. Now the softness of this shadow is actually down to the size of this head. If I just spin this round, you should be able to see that that is about 100 millimeters. So in comparison to the size of the subject, it's slightly larger than the diameter of the apple. Therefore, from the apple's point of view, if you like, it's quite a large light source, and it's that large light source relative to the size of the subject which is giving the soft shadow. And doing things in this way will give you an awful lot of control. For instance, if I now move this very slightly further forwards, it will have a dramatic effect on the image. You just fire that off. There we are. I moved the light maybe 5-6 millimeters, and yet if I go back to the previous image, you can see the difference it has made. The highlight has moved, the shadow has moved, the background has moved. Everything has changed with a tiny change in the position of the light. So if I just move that ever so slightly again, we take another image. There, we have yet more difference, if you like. So this was with the flash almost directly overhead. Then I moved it a tiny amount. Then I've moved it some more. And this is starting to give me the result that I want. But the other thing that I noticed was that the composition could be improved if I zoomed in a little. So what I'm going to do now is just move the lens from 35 millimeters up to 70 and just recompose the image. Now I'll just need to refocus that, and also just change the angle somewhat. So I'm just going to wind that up ever so slightly on the tripod and just adjust the angle, something like that. There we are, that's more like it. That's more of the sort of thing that I was looking for. But I don't think it's quite focused. Oh, it is focused. The problem that we're having here is one of depth of field, I think. You can see that the stem and the front of the apple here is quite well focused, but it's going out quite a lot at the back. So what I think I'm going to do is give myself some more depth of field by increasing the aperture from f8 to f16. Now f8 to f16 is 2 stops, so I'm going to need to add 2 stops of energy to the flash. I'll just do that, and we'll fire that again. There we are, that's better. This is what we had before. You can see that it's going out of focus, especially at the front here. And then this is what we've got now. So this is now quite sharp, which is just what I want. Move around there. Excellent. One of the effects of getting in this close is that you could get flare from the light. You can see the beginnings of some flare just here in the image. So in order to stop that happening, what I would do is, just using this piece of card as a flag, I will just put this just above the lens, and we'll just fire that again to see if we can get rid of those effects. There we are, that's much better. You can see that it's increased the contrast overall in the image, which is just what we want. Okay, so finally, just to add a little context to this image, I'm just going to spray it just to produce some droplets of water on the top of the apple. And I'm just going to spray it with this small misting water spray. And just to avoid the water going all over the backdrop, I'll just use this piece of paper towel just to stop it going everywhere. So we'll just spray that on there. Let's see if that's enough. Give that a go. Yes, that's starting to get there. You can see the droplets on the top here. I might just carry on and add some to the other side as well. So just add a little over here, like that. Fire that. Oh, I just better put the flag in just to get rid of the flare. There we are. So I think that image has come out reasonably well. So it just remains to just go into Photoshop and do some post-production. So here we are in Photoshop. And I've been through the files and opened up 2 variants. One of which is the original idea, where I had quite a lot of background showing, so you can see the graduation and the apple. And then the second one is this one, which is where we zoomed in somewhat and also added the water droplets. Now I think this is a far superior image to start with than this one. This is all very nice, but it's a bit samey. This has been done many times before. Whereas this, I think, will end up looking a little different. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just concentrate on the top part of the apple here. So I'm going to just crop in quite tightly using a 16:9 crop on the top half of the apple. There we are. Something like that. Let's click on OK. Now we'll just bring that up. There we go. Now the level of detail that has been achieved here is quite remarkable, I think. All the tiny little highlights in all of the water droplets really adds to the atmosphere of the image. And the background graduation is a nice touch, I think. A nice contrast with the colour that you've got in the apple. So I think that has made quite a interesting image from a really simple subject with just one light source. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I've done that. And if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.